Senator, I know the briefing was classified, but what can you tell us about what you heard?
Well, as you point out, it was classified. What we heard is what we heard earlier in the press conference, that the men and women in our military have performed brilliantly. I know that everyone shares in condolences for those people who have been lost. But we heard, as we've heard, as both Aaron and Caitlin said, mixed messages about what the strategy is here, what the end game is here, and how we're going to get out of Iran. No one in the free world misses the Ayatollah. He repressed his people, killed thousands just in the last few months, sponsored terrorism across the whole region, from the Houthis in Yemen to Hezbollah in Lebanon. But what is not clear is how long this is going to go on, the extent to which it's escalating. We've, as you pointed out, 14 countries who are saying Americans need to get out of those countries, and just what the end game is.
One of the questions I have after hearing from Secretary Rubio and from Speaker Mike Johnson, who spoke after the Gang of Eight briefing, is how much did the United States strike Iran because Israel was going to strike Iran on its own, and the U.S. believed that after that happened, Iran was going to strike U.S. military bases in the region, and that is the notion of preemption at hand here. Is that really the main reason that these strikes happen now?
Well, again, we've been given a lot of reasons why these strikes happen now. That's been one of them. I would hope that if we disagreed with Israel's assessment, that we would have made that clear to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we would have pointed out that given our support for Israel, for not only their defense of their country, but the weapons that they use, that they would be willing to listen to what the President of the United States had to say. So I think that's not at all clear. It's one of the reasons that's been given, and again, just as what happened in Venezuela, we have a lot of mixed messages about what the goal is, what the strategy is, and no transparency to the American people in advance.
Earlier today, President Trump laid out objectives for striking Iran. They were to destroy Iran's missile capabilities, to annihilate the Iranian Navy, to end its nuclear weapons ambitions, and to prevent Iran from arming terrorists. Do you think that President Trump has effectively made the case to the American people about why Iran needed to be attacked, why they needed to be attacked now, why U.S. service members are dying for this mission?
Well, I think he needs to do a much better job of sharing with the American people what the rationale is. What we have heard from negotiations that were going on is that they were very close to reaching an agreement to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So we're not sure what actually happened there. We know that, excuse me, anything that we can do to prevent Iran's support for terrorism across the Middle East region, and here in the United States for that matter, is important to do. But again, the president hasn't laid out a clear strategy. He's not shared that with the American people. He's not shared that with Congress. He's decided to go to war without authorization from Congress, and the threat of escalation continues.